Good afternoon to everyone present here. It is indeed a great honor and privilege to stand before you today. On behalf of RBANMs Educational Charity, we welcome our distinguished guest, Mr. P Sainath, a journalist, author, and one of India's most respected voices for rural justice and equality. Mr. Sainath has dedicated his life to bringing the stories of India's rural poor to the forefront, stories that often go unheard. As the founder of the People's Archive of Rural India, Pari, he has created a remarkable platform that documents the everyday lives, struggles, and achievements of people living in the villages of our country. A recipient of the Maxe Award, Mr. Sainath's fearless journalism and deep compassion have inspired countless individuals to look beyond the cities and truly understand the heartbeat of India, its villages and its people. Sir, your continues to remember us that journalism is not just about headlines, but about humanity. Your presence here today is a great inspiration for all of us. The students, teachers, and community member of RBA and MS, on behalf of the management, principal, staff, and students of RBNM's educational charity, I extend a very warm and a respectful welcome to you. Mr. P. Sainath, we are truly honored to have you with us and look forward to hearing your thoughts and experiences that will surely enlighten and inspire us. Thank you once again. A very hearty welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. You know, the mention of the countless martyrs of India's freedom struggle, hundreds of millions of people participated in the freedom struggle, tens of millions died fighting for independence and freedom. And you know that today there's barely 2 or 3 dozen of them still alive. Still alive. These 2-3 dozen human beings, there are about 100, but they are they're no longer articulate. They can't speak. They're too ill. They're dying. But there are, and that's why I chose to do that book, The Last Heroes, because for me it's a gigantic tragedy that in 3 years, 5 years, not a single one of those who fought for India's freedom will be alive. Okay? And your generation and other generations that follow you will never get to see, speak to, listen, engage with, touch a bona fide freedom fighter who got your country independence. That's a huge, huge tragedy from my point of view. It's one of the most important things in our website, the People's Archive of Rural India. We have a whole web section called Freedom Fighters Gallery. And these are simply the most extraordinary people. Now, also the way we have covered, written about our freedom struggle in the last so many years and decades has not done justice at all to our freedom fighters. You know, when we say who fought for India's independence, we'll all come up with the names of Gandhi, Ambedkar, Netaji Bose, all Bhagat Singh. But you know what all of them agreed on? They agreed on one thing, that they were not individually responsible for the success of the independence struggle. In 1931, Gandhi wrote to an adoring fan, Premabai Kantak, she wrote to him, You're such a great man, you're bringing revolution, you're doing this. The Mahatma had a habit. He would just turn the postcard and write one line in reply. He wrote, great men appear to be the cause of revolution. In truth, it is people themselves, ordinary people themselves, who are the cause. So, the millions and millions of, if we read our history books, it's as if all the freedom, famous figures of independence were those who went to Oxford, Cambridge, took law degrees, came back, fought in the courts. That's not true. They were a very small group. The greatest revolutionary of India, Bhagat Singh, from a very different philosophy of Gandhi, he said more or less the same thing. When he wrote from the jail to his friend, Pandit Shiv Verma, Bhagat Singh asked the question, what is the role of us revolutionaries? And he wrote that we revolutionaries, we are the gems, the precious stones on the edifice of freedom, on the building of freedom. We did not build its foundation. That came from ordinary people, from the masses, from farmers, laborers. That's who got you freedom. Every one of them in their own language said, it wasn't us, please don't worship us. Understand who brought you your independence and freedom. When Gandhi went in 19, he was just Mohandas Gandhi when he went in 2015 to Champaran in Bihar. Watching the peasantry unite against the indigo planters, against the British Raj, he understood that day that all our parties are all Gymkhana tea parties without the masses. The man who went there as Mohandas returned a Mahatma. Also, people understood had very different understanding of what we have today. You know, we're talking about India's freedom. The very interesting thing about all the freedom fighters in my book, and I met hundreds of them, 16 of them, I put them in the book. You know one thing? They all had a dual understanding, an understanding that there were two different things they fought for. And I think the most important lesson we learn from them is this. Captain Bao was the underground leader of Tufan Sena. He was a very interesting character. He died in 2022. When I first discovered that he was alive in 2016, went to meet him, and I was gushing enthusiasm and praise about his role in India's freedom, he stopped me and he corrected me. He said, these are two very different things. We fought for two things. We fought for independence and we fought for freedom. We attained independence. Freedom is a long way off. What do you think is the difference between independence and freedom? Think about it, and you'll see how perceptive that comment is. We fought for independence and freedom, and you can, if you feel like answering that question right now, I'm happy to listen to you. What's the difference between independence and freedom? If you want to answer right now, that's fine. But I need it to trouble your mind. I need it to bother your intellect. What is the difference between independence and freedom? Yes.
Probably independence is something that we got free from someone's independent, and freedom is something that we got free from someone's ruling on us.
You're right on both counts, but both counts add up to independence. These fighters, the ones we call freedom fighters, they felt there was something beyond independence. Freedom was something beyond independence. Why did we then give ourselves a constitution? Yeah? To pursue the ideal of freedom. The constitution is not about a celebration of independence. It is the pursuit of human rights and freedom, the rights of citizens. Right? So remember that these freedom fighters, please sit, you don't understand. These fighters were the ones because of whom you have independence and a constitution. And in the constitution, there is a section called Directive Principles of State Policy, the right to work, the right to life. These are not fundamental rights, but the Supreme Court of India has ruled they are every inch as important as the fundamental rights. Okay. How did these, let me then tell you how the freedom fighters viewed the difference. As you so correctly said, in your answer, you correctly said, independence was an event. You broke away from British imperial rule, you broke away from British imperialism and formed a nation state based on the rights of citizens. Right? That was independence. You threw out the British colonizer and you formed your own nation state with rights. Freedom is not an event. Freedom is a process. It consists of so many rights which we have not all been able to access. That's why your constitution has the directive principles of state policy. Freedom is something much larger than independence. There are those of us, not me, but my parents, who saw independence. None of us can claim to have seen the achievement of freedom. All these freedom fighters, they understood the difference. Independence is an event. Freedom, we may never realize it fully in our lifetimes, but we fight for it. Right? I'd like to show you a little bit. The other thing about when we ask people and you look at the books, history books, all those names, do you notice, almost always the names we come up with are all male. Right? You should know that tens of millions of women fought as freedom fighters in far more dangerous circumstances than merely going to jail for a satyagraha. One of the oldest freedom fighter I spoke to and recorded, her name was Babani Mahato. She was 104 she was 104 when I interviewed her. You know the way our society's prejudices are, the way our social prejudices are, we even put that into our definition of freedom fighters in the law. There are two laws, Swatantrata Sainik Samman Yojana, for pension for freedom fighters. Before that, there was another which was replaced. In this law, you will find the assumption that the freedom fighter is a man. You know, whenever they talk about survivors of the freedom fighter, they use the word widow, not spouse. They use the word widow, which means that the freedom fighter was a man. Absolutely untrue. And you should know this. Like, let me give you Babani Mahat. And because this was the way the law was structured, a lot of women accepted it. That, oh, my husband is a freedom fighter, I'm not. Babani Mahato, when I was trying to interview her for half the morning, she kept telling me, but I'm not a freedom fighter. My husband was, he went to jail. You should have done this interview 20 years ago when he was alive. What was I doing? I was cooking, running the family, doing the agriculture, doing. You know what she was doing? At one point, I asked her in desperation because I wanted to keep the conversation alive. So I said, okay, if your husband was the freedom fighter and all that, it must have been very difficult for you when he was in jail. She looked at me and said, no, it was much more difficult. It was worse when he came back. then, then I asked her, why do you say that, Babani Di? Why do you say that? So she said, every time he came, he would bring these 20, 25 people and I had to feed them. This was during the Bengal famine. And you know who those 20, 25 people were? They were underground revolutionaries hiding in the jungles of Purulia. This woman kept alive your underground revolutionaries. For months on stretch, she grew the food, she cooked the food, she fed them. Far greater achievement than her husband spending 1 year in jail for a satyagraha. Had she been caught, what would have been her fate? Yeah. She fed the revolution. She fed those who fought for your independence at the height of the Bengal famine, when it was impossible, people were falling dead from zero nourishment, from hunger. That's the sort of people. Another woman freedom fighter, in the more classical sense of our male prejudices, is a woman called Mallu Swarajam. And I'm going to show you a 2-minute video of hers. She got radicalized at age 11 from attending underground study camps, etc., in Telangana, in Warangal. Her father was a medium-sized landlord, a jamindar. She rebelled against her father, joined the uprising against the Nizam of Hyderabad. The Nizam of Hyderabad had this deadly militia called the Razakars. Yeah. At age 13, Mallu Swarajam and her squadrons were attacking and killing Razakars with what weapon? With a slingshot. Yeah. By the way, even today, traditional hunter communities use slingshots to kill wild boars, to kill rabbits. Sometimes the irula can hit a bird, can bring down a bird with a slingshot. It's a stone. If it hits your head from 40, 50 feet at great velocity, you can be hurt. At 16, Mallu Swarajam was firing a rifle, and you have very well personally, she's a very short-tempered, a fighter to the core. At 16, she was the head of all the armed squads, the dalams as they are called, all the armored squads of the Telangana uprising, male and female, she was the head. Can you imagine how effective she must have been for the underground movement to put a 16-year-old girl in charge of the uprising? When there were many 30-year-old males. And that too in that time when women had even less voice than today, but she was there. Many years later, I brought her to one company, one software company in Hyderabad, held its annual day. On that annual day, they requested me and my friends, can you bring someone interesting? So I brought Mallu Swarajam. She was 84 years old that week in 2014. She lived up to 92. Mallu Swarajam, I interviewed her on the stage with someone to answer questions that she answered. They would be translated into English. It was all young software techies, aged 21 to 25. And I asked her the question though, and she got very angry because she felt, you know the bloody answer and you're asking me questions like that. I asked her, Swarajam Garu, your slingshot, was it really effective in close combat? In human combat, is a slingshot effective? She got mad. Immediately she stood up, yeah, pulled out a slingshot from her sari, put a cricket ball in it and started swinging it around. Do you know that the Nizam's vizier, his first minister, personally declared a bounty of 10,000 rupees on her head. To know what 10,000 rupees was in 1946, in 1946, with 10,000 rupees, you could buy 83,000 kilograms of rice. Okay? She was the not most wanted man, she was the most wanted fighter. Woman. Just like Babani Mahato was a woman. I then again, last interview with her was when she was 92, just before she died. That is Mallu Swarajam at age 16 with a rifle. She looks good, doesn't she? You know who took this photograph? I got this in the archive of the Communist Party of India, Marxist. She was one of them. But they said we didn't take this photograph. It was taken by the Nizam secret police. They got it from there. And so this is Mallu at age 16. Then Mallu at age 92. But more important than that is what she told the bunch of youngsters sitting in that auditorium. And it is something so inspiring. They asked her, you know, Swarajam Garu, you are talking about, you used rifles and slingshots, yeah, in your fighting for freedom. What can we do? And she told them, have you heard of, she didn't speak a word of English, but she was extremely well read in her own language. She said, have you heard of Occupy Wall Street? The movement by young techies in America fighting for justice. And she said they were all techies. Yes, my weapon was the slingshot and rifle. Your weapon is the laptop and the mobile phone. Use those to fight for justice. So these were the sort of people who were your freedom fighters. I'm happy to engage with any questions you have.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. Myself, Mannat of class 10. I had a question about H.S. Doraswamy. Why was he awarded as. Actually, he got a award. I'm sorry, I forgot the name. Yeah, Basavana Puraskara Award.
H.S. Doreswamy was a freedom fighter from your city of Bengaluru. Okay. He was, though he came from a village, he spent his adult life in Bengaluru. By the way, that man at age 102 was standing up and making public speeches on public platforms. He fought for the purpose of freedom. He fought for communal harmony, and many people who incite communal hatred attacked him, challenging his credentials as a freedom fighter, saying, this man is a fake. People who never participated in the freedom struggle were challenging him. Let me tell you about the Basava Puraskara. He was a journalist. In the only character in my book who, by the way, completed a college degree. Most of the other characters in my book, some of them did not see a school even from outside, let alone inside. Like the tribal heroine, Salihan. Yeah, she never saw a school. She lived in deep jungle. And she died illiterate a few years after I met her. Doreswamy was not a journalist, he was a teacher. He was teaching, I think, science or physics, and he came here on a thing. One of his friends, they were all part of the Mysore Chalo movement. The Mysore Chalo movement was aimed at forcing the Maharaja of Mysore and the Diwan Bahadur particularly to merge Mysore into the Indian Republic. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to be an monarchy, independent monarchy state. Right? So they had this movement called Mysore Chalo. And many people from different political parties, Congress Socialist, Communist Party, were part of this Mysore Chalo movement. While this thing was happening, a friend of his, who was the editor of a newspaper, died of a horrible rabies disease, rabies injuries after a dog bite. And he made Doreswamy promise to take over his newspaper. So Doreswamy could not say no to a dying friend on his deathbed. So he said, okay. He didn't know anything about journalism, as he himself says. He went on to become such a fine journalist that he was the first, one of the earliest presidents of the Karnataka, all Karnataka State Journalists Union. He was the first of the great leaders of the Journalists Union of those days. But here is what he did to escape. He was fighting the British, he was fighting the Raj. In Mysore, he registered his newspaper, and they would frequently close down the newspaper. The Diwan Bahadur was very ruthless. They would shut it down, punishment, 20 days closure, sometimes permanent closure. Across the border from Mysore was Rayalaseema, Anantapur, right? So he went to Anantapur, which was under British rule. There he registered the newspaper, one newspaper. he registered it under 6 names. Why would you register a newspaper, one newspaper under 6 titles? You know why? He called that people's voice, people's choice, people's champion, people's warrior, people's guardian. When they shut down his paper, the next day, the same publication, same editors, same reporters would appear under a different name. The same newspaper would appear. So they shut down people's voice. The very same thing would. Look, look at the courage that the journalists of that time had, and look at your media today. How far we have fallen. So he did this consistently, playing this game between Mysore and Anantapur, and continued all his life to be a journalist. And he wrote he wrote books, and more, he wrote booklets, because he wanted ordinary people to understand in simple Kannada. So he wrote shorter books and booklets, many of them. And he had this enormous sense of writing skill. He had an enormous sense of humor. After he was attacked by communal forces who said he's a fake freedom fighter, he went out and he suddenly showed up one day at Mysore jail and requested that they bring his certificate of being jailed from 1930, that is in the 1930s. He got it. When I went to his home, as other journalists did, he was writing something. He had a real sense of humor. I asked him, Doraiswamy sir, what are you doing? What are you writing? He says, I say, I'm writing my new CV. Because people are casting allegations against my old CV, I'm writing my new CV. Yeah. He was 102 when he told me this. So he did a hell of a lot of writing. Much of his writings and his diaries and books have been donated to the Gandhi Bhavan. During the emergency, this man, when they shut down all sources of earning, his son had got admission in the regional engineering college. Yeah. And he refused to go and beg for bank loan or anything. He was in jail. He told his son, whatever we can raise ourselves, we raise. We don't owe money to anyone. So the son, who is still alive, could not complete his engineering degree. Then a lot of his friends came together while he was still in jail in the emergency and put the son back in college, paid his fees, and today he's some 70 years old with a degree. This is H.S. Doraiswamy.
Also, sir, I had one more question to ask.
Sure.
As there will be few of us who want to be a journalist. So, what are the risks of being journalist?
It depends on what kind of journalist you want to be. If you want to be one of those morons screaming on TV every night, you'll make a lot of money. So long as you are screaming in favor of the establishment and government. We look at these anchors and we think, oh, these are very powerful people. They are very powerful people as long as they are on the side of power. The day H.S. Doraiswamy was always on the side opposing power. He was always on the side challenging the establishment. To be that kind of a journalist, you will earn a fraction of what the pro-establishment journalist earns. Yeah, you will not be invited to the major government and embassy and consulate parties. Huh? But he wasn't either.
Okay, so
Good afternoon, sir. Why agriculture is not introduced in our education system?
I wish I had the answer to that question. It is, see, the thing is that who creates your curriculum? Who creates that system? In fact, there are lots of problems with not coordinating our education with agriculture. We created our school calendar, our academic calendar, according to what the British felt. You know, in May, the British would go off to the hill stations. They would go off to, you know, Kodaikanal or Jog Falls or somewhere. So they made the system of holidays, exams that was in Britain, they introduced here. If you'd had your exams in each state, I believe, you could have a slightly different system linked to the agricultural cycle. That's when many village children will go to school, because during the harvest and the sowing, no child is going to attend school in the countryside. How will they attend? How will village children attend school during sowing and harvest? Yeah. So that was a very big problem in not taking agriculture and agrarian agriculture calendar into account in the creation of the educational system. Second, the entire idea of education itself, there are so many questions related to what is this thing we call vocational education? What is the purpose of education? Is the purpose of education, is it meant to be, like we have reduced it, is it meant to be a training, or is it to be an enlightenment, a broadening of our minds, a growth of our intellect, our understanding of the world? What is education? So according to that, in that list of priorities, agriculture is very low. So they don't. I believe they should. I'm with you.
What challenges he has faced during the journalist and freedom fighter?
Sorry, who?
Doraswamy.
Okay, some of them I already told you. But I'll tell you this, that he and others were arrested in a bomb conspiracy case that was no bomb at all. The kind of challenges he faced included what they were doing. They were putting something like a big firecracker. Yeah, making those. You can sit, please. They were taking little bombs that were not greater than your big firecrackers that you get for 50 rupees, 100 rupees today. And they would put it in the post box outside institutions of authority, government secretariat, Tehsildar's office, and even that, they would wait till the last post was taken. Yeah. So they would put that inside. One day he got caught in that, and 2-3 times he was caught. And I think the most powerful experience he ever had was being jailed in what is now Jarahalli, the Air Force, near the Air Force base. Do you know at that time Jarahalli was also a prisoner of war base for Italian prisoners, captured and they were sent here to Jarahalli. In Jarahalli, and the old man told me that story, all of us were in tears. In Jarahalli, while he was in the prison, 12 or 18 army men, Indian army, British Indian army soldiers were brought to the Jarahalli jail because they had conspired and defected and joined Netaji Bose's Indian National Army. Some of them were actual soldiers in the British Army. But the call for freedom, the call for independence went to the hearts of many people in the armed forces. The Indian Navy had one of the biggest uprisings of the freedom struggle, 1946, the Royal Indian Navy Mutiny, 1946, RIN Mutiny, as it was known. Now, anyway, these 14 people were brought there that night. And they heard them singing songs and shouting slogans of freedom, azadi. And then they spoke to them, shouted across. The British officer came and ordered the superintendent that all these people are to be hanged at one time on Monday morning, or whichever morning it was. The jail superintendent, an Indian, a Muslim, refused. He didn't want to do it. He said, in the protocol, there is no provision for us hanging more than one person at a time. The officer said, no, you have to kill all of them at one time. That's a lesson to these Indians. The superintendent refused. Then at night, a van came and took away all 14 of them to the army camp where they were shot dead at one time. They were just shot dead at one time, though the sentence was hanging. And they gave Doraiswamy and the other prisoners a letter written in blood about their aims, their ideals, why they would challenge the colonizer, why they would not accept anything other than azadi for India, and why they had gone to the INA. They wrote a letter in blood. A short letter, but that was the kind of era he lived through, the kind of challenges people faced. And they all they left the place singing and shouting slogans, knowing that they were going to be shot in half an hour, 1 hour. Yeah, that was the life Doraiswamy faced. Constant pickups by the police force. You know, the other challenges that Doraiswamy faced. Please remember what we said at the beginning of this class, the difference between independence and freedom. He had been part of the generation that achieved independence. He continued to fight for freedom and spent 19 months in prison during the emergency. 2-3 times before he was imprisoned, the police would jail him, but the courts would free him. You know why he was jailed? He wrote a letter, a direct, open letter to Mrs. Indira Gandhi, saying what you are doing is wrong. When he was produced in court, those days the judiciary had some integrity. The judge threw that out of the court. He said, release him at once. What is this nonsense? If a citizen cannot write a letter to the Prime Minister. So, Doraiswamy went to jail under the Mysore Maharaja. He went to jail in Jarahalli in the culmination of the freedom struggle. He went to jail in the emergency. And he was always ready to stand up and go to jail for yet another cause. You should just see the way he spoke. If you go on to People's Archive of Rural India, you will find videos of some of these freedom fighters that we have put up there.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Myself, Janani. What role did H.S. Doraiswamy play in shaping public opinion against British rule?
Very, very, very major. I mean, he was fighting on several fronts. Doraiswamy was someone who was against the caste system. He was fighting for the social reform. Doraiswamy was fighting the Mysore Maharaja and the feudal monarchy. Doraiswamy was also fighting the British rule. So his role was multiple. He was fighting on many fronts. As a journalist, as a teacher, as a citizen.
Myself, Sheikh Ibrahim. I have a question, sir. Why did you choose only Doraiswamy, sir, in that book? And what was the thing you liked from her?
I didn't choose Doraiswamy from the book.
No, sir, you wrote a book, no, sir.
I didn't. I mean, you asked me a question about him. There are 15 others in the book. See, the diversity of the freedom struggle was incredible. In the freedom struggle and in the book, there are Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, atheists. The whole bunch of them are there. But why did I choose Doraiswamy as simply because he is one of the last living freedom fighters. Right? By the time I came to do the book, there are less than 100 of them alive. And many of them are not able to speak anymore. Doraiswamy spoke like he was speaking like a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old. Yeah, he was very good. So I chose him also for another reason. I think I understand your question better now.
And what was the thing you liked from him?
From him, I'm saying the spirit, like in everyone else that I chose and wrote about, the sheer spirit of fighting for justice, equality, freedom. The principles that he fought for, all these people fought for, they are there in the preamble to your constitution. Justice for all, economic, social, political. Sorry, social, economic, political. Yeah. So it is that's what drew me to these people. But all of them, and why I used a geographical scale to choose from the 200 odd who were. I started doing this 20 years ago. If you read your history books, everyone will think that freedom struggle happened in UP and Bihar. That's not true. That is not true. Long before the first bullet was fired in 1857, the Adivasis of Bengal and Purulia, Jungle Mahal, were fighting those who had sided with Siraj-ud-Dawla and those who were fighting from the grabbing of their land. In 1760 to 1806, 1767 to 1806, 40 years, they fought in what was known as the Chawar Rebellion. 1794, 60 years before 1857 revolt, Veerapandya Kattabomman in Tamil Nadu, the Maruda brothers, they brought the East India Company closer to collapse than anyone in history did. And then in 1780s and 90s, in this state of Karnataka, the only Indian prince who never compromised with the British and died on the battlefield, Tipu Sultan. So when I did this book, I didn't want all the characters to be from UP Bihar, always. So there are characters from north, northwest, south, east, and I was doing 2 people from northeast. Unfortunately, both died during COVID. The interviews were incomplete. Doreswamy came under South Karnataka, and our Malu Swarajam came from Andhra, N. Sankaraya from Tamil Nadu, um, RN, uh, you know, Kalpan from Tamil Nadu. I did not pick up Kerala because Keralite freedom fighters are well known. I mean, they actually enter the history books in many ways, but also because I wanted to show that every part of the country, people in every corner of this country stood up and challenged British rule. So he came in that arc. I took Doreswamy from Karnataka southwest.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Rakesh. Can you please share about your schooling and your childhood memories, sir?
I am very reluctant to present myself as a role model. I spent much of the 1970s getting suspended or rusticated in one campus or the other. Okay, so I don't think you should emulate me. Right? But yeah, I did I studied in Madras Christian College High School, Chennai, then graduated from Loyola College, Chennai, went to JNU where I did my MA in history under professors like Romila Thapar, Bipin Chandra, all of them. Then I was doing my MPhil PhD in JNU, but I got more interested in journalism and switched. But the journalism, the journalism was much more, I felt I had an advantage over all my other fellow journalists because I was trained as a historian. There was depth, there was understanding to the areas I went. I knew what had happened there before independence. That made a huge difference.